Hey everyone, this is Uri Peleg for Guerrilla Poker, and I'm bringing you guys a video today where I analyzed some high stakes hands that were posted on the 2+2 forum. They have a thread there every month where it's like the November high stakes hands, October high stakes hands. Every month, people from all over the world post interesting high stakes hands that were played online. It's really interesting to read through. If you don't, I highly recommend it. I just picked a few of my favorite hands from November. They feature some pretty cool plays and interesting players like Linus, Love, Limitless, and others. So without further ado, let's get into the action. This is played between Berry Sweet and Linus Love. And to give you guys a bit of background, these are each considered one of the best, if not the best, at their respective games, where for Linus it's No Limit Hold'em, and for Berry Sweet it's Pot Limit Omaha. And these two have been battling for quite a while, playing heads up mix. Half of it is Pot Limit Omaha, half of it is No Limit Hold'em. Stakes are very, very high. We don't know how much these guys are cross-booking. Very often in high-stakes games, the stakes are actually higher than they seem. Lots of interesting hands every month watching these two guys, so I think it's fitting to start with them. So in this hand, they're roughly 160 deep, or 170 deep. Berry opens, Linus 3-bets, and Berry calls. And we get a Jack Deuce 3 two-tone board. Whenever you look at a board, you always want to be thinking a bit about the range interactions. Jack Deuce 3 has one effect where Berry Sweet is the only one with deuces and threes. But mostly in terms of the fact that the deuce and the three are so low makes the board very, very bricky. It means that it's a board that gets aggressively bet and aggressively stabbed, and that protection is a big thing. And I think overall the board probably favors Linus quite a bit, because bricky boards tend to favor the aggressor. So you probably see Linus lead out with a high frequency of c-bets, and we see a 3200 c-bet, which is 40%. Berry Sweet calls. 5 of diamonds turn. Here I'd expect Linus to keep barreling with a value range where the threshold's a bit tough to determine. Is it King Jack or Queen Jack or Ace Jack, but somewhere around that area. And, you know, a bunch of his draws, which is hands with a 4 or a 6, maybe something like King Queen or King 10 with a King of Hearts, and then some flush draws. So in this case, Linus checks, Berry checks back, we get the 3 of Spades river, and Linus goes for a fairly sizable bet. I think this is about 2/3 pot. Here, again, we want to think about Linus's range. And this board really bricked out a lot, so this is one of those situations where it's very tough to control your bluffing frequency. You're gonna get here as a 3-better with a bunch of hands like 8-9 of diamonds, 7-8 of diamonds, 10-8 of diamonds, Queen-9 of diamonds, and you know, diamonds, spades, clubs. All those suits are often giving up the turn, and none of those hands improved on the river. So it's very, very easy to bluff too much here if you're not being careful, which I'm sure Linus is for what it's worth. And yeah, one of those spots where you can potentially catch someone bluffing a bit too much. And as far as what's good enough for value, again, I'm not a heads-up expert. I wouldn't be shocked if somewhere around 6s or 7s is maybe even good enough to bet this big for Linus. But yeah, we see the bet. Berry makes the call, catches Linus bluffing with a King-9, which is maybe too wide. I wouldn't be shocked if Linus is possibly bluffing too much here, but the money's going to Linus. So, crazy hand. This is really shocking to see. And what actually happened here? Well, what the hell happened? So I think Berry correctly recognized that Linus was bluffing, and we don't know if this is going to be some timing read or soul read, or it's just the way he perceives this spot, and he perceives it like I do, where it's a decent spot to look to bluff catch because it's high likelihood people are bluffing a bit too much. But he apparently made a call with a hand that lost to one of Linus's bluffs, which is a big technical blunder by one of these players. It's not clear which one, but certainly Linus got the upper hand of this interaction. And if you ask yourself, what did Berry Sweet call with? I think the most likely answer is something like King 7 of Hearts, where in a lot of ways, if you have a King High flush draw and you think King High is good, It has pretty good removal effects to call because Linus will probably barrel his flush draws on a turn, so his river bluffs will not contain hearts. So having a king and having 2 hearts, nice hand to call, but didn't work out for Barry this time in this pretty cool hand. And I'm sure Linus is not complaining, shipping 34,000 with his bluff. Next hand, this hand is played between Limitless and Moonus Star. Limitless, also an online and live legend, been playing the highest stakes for years and years now, and recently he started challenging pretty much everyone to play heads up. He only recently finished a big heads up match against Button Clicker, who's also one of the best heads up players in the world. Next challenger for Limitless is Moonus Star. Personally, I don't know him as a heads up player, I know him as a 6-max player. He's been a 6-max player for as long as I can remember. He's been playing high stakes for quite a few years. Very, very good player. So these guys are playing 200, 400, heads up, no limit hold'em. Limitless raises, Moonus 3 bets, and Limitless calls. We get an A6-9 rainbow board. In terms of the dynamics of the board, this is very, very different from Jack Deuce 3 that we saw before. This board, because of the ace, is a lot more locked down. There are a lot of hands for Moonus that are in no rush to get money in, but that have nice equity. So hands like Pocket Kings, Pocket Queens, Ace Deuce are hands that have very high equity but are not in any rush to get money in. So this is definitely a board I'd expect to get bet less than a Jack Deuce 3 board. And Moonus indeed checks. Limitless checks back. We get the turn 9 of clubs. And you know, when Moonus checks here, I'm always thinking, you know, everything is mixed in strategy, but you always want to be thinking about the most likely hands because these are going to be overrepresented in his range. And whenever someone checks here, I always think Pocket Kings, Ace Deuce, Pocket Queens. Those are the most likely hands, and those are the hands I should base my strategy against. Now, on the 9 of clubs, all of those hands for Moonus should keep checking, and the 9 strongly favors Limitless's range because of pre-flop and him being the caller, he's just going to naturally end up with a lot more hands with a 9, such as even 10-9 offsuit or 9-7 suited, hands that Moonus will have a lot less combinations of, but Limitless will have like the full amount of combos. I'd expect Moonus to check a lot, which he does. Limitless goes for a 2/3 pot size bet. Bet size usually indicates, again, even though everything is mixed, what is your range based around when you bet 2/3 pot? And I think on this board, you're gonna need a good ace. Not sure where the threshold lies, but certainly one where your kicker plays. So maybe ace 8 or ace 10. For value, certainly trips could go in this range, but I wouldn't really expect a hand like a 6 or pocket 8s or anything like that to go this size. So yeah, we expect Limitless to have good aces, trips, and some bluffs, and then Moonus goes for a check raise. Now, this is very surprising for me to see. If you have trips or a boat, I would expect a lot of people to just check call and let Limitless keep firing, whether it's a bluff or a value bet, and wait with a raise until the river. But in terms of what this raise should be, value hands threshold is some kind of trips. I don't know which kicker you need in order to raise here, whether it's Queen 9 or King 9. I can't imagine you can raise a weak kickered 9. And when you're thinking about bluffs, because you're out of position, you want to be very equity based. So first of all, any straight draw or gut shot that you get here with certainly is a valid hand to check raise. In addition, you could go ahead and check raise something like pocket 7s or pocket 8s, where these are hands that are not really doing that good as check calls, but they do have outs to the super nuts. If you river a 7 or an 8, you're 2 outer, so they're kind of nice semi-bluffs, even though they have 2 outs and not 4 outs like a gut shot. And then you could go with something that has nice removal effects for Limitless's trips, which would mean 2 suited cards, spades or hearts, and spades and hearts make sure that Limitless has less suited 9x. So something like Queen, Jack of spades, for example. Those are the type of hands I would imagine for bluffs. So Limitless calls, we get the 7 of diamonds. For my bluffing range, this would improve pocket 7s and 10-8 suited, so pretty good card for Moonus' range. and he pots the river, gets called by Limitless. Limitless has king 9, so easy call on the turn and easy call on the river. This hand should never really consider folding because it's just a bit too strong. Munoz has king of clubs, jack of spades. Pretty crazy bluff. I was fairly surprised to see this. I think as far as choice of cards, like I mentioned, this is not a hand I would ever choose to bluff with. I think it's a technically inaccurate bluff to make. But Munoz was almost certainly just using a random number generator when he's doing this, which means rather than pick the most accurate hands, he's more worried about getting good frequencies. So he thinks he wants to check raise, say, 4% of his range in a spot, has a program that rolls him a random number between 0 and 100, and if it rolls between 0 to 4, he'll check raise. And I think that's probably the most likely thing to have happened here. It looks really crazy, right, when you see this, but the craziness comes from the random number generator, rather than Munoz being some sick genius being, oh, this is the perfect time to check raise. That's not very likely what's going on here. Okay, next hand, we have Lucky CPS and Poker Kluka, both long-time high-stakes regulars. Or not very long time, these guys aren't as old school as the previous guys, but they've still been here for a while. Queen 9-7 two-tone, Poker Kluka checks, Lucky CPS checks back, 4 of hearts, and here Poker Kluka leads out for a pot-sized bet. Pot-sized bet in this situation is a very polarized range, so I'm expecting to see a bunch of draws, which there are a million of on this board, whether it's 5-6, 10-8, Jack-10, clubs, or all the gut shots, like there are lots of draws to choose from. And then for value to go pot, I would guess somewhere in the area of Queen-10, Queen-Jack or better is the hand strength you need to go for this sizing. That's the range I'd expect to see from Poker Kluka betting. And here Lucky CPS raises. So what kind of range would raise against this? Now remember that Poker Kluka's range is good top pairs or better and a bunch of draws. So against that range you want to be raising with, I think, actually 3 types of hands. Of course, one type is obviously the hands that are better than good top pairs. So if you ever checked back aces, that's a decent hand to raise. And if you turned a good hand, so pocket 4s, queen 4 suited, 7-4 suited, those types of hands are certainly very nice candidates to raise. That's the value range. Next you have a bluffing range, which is, you know, some combination of your own draws. Third, you're gonna have a range that a lot of people don't think of, but that actually makes a lot of sense here, and that's connected to Poker Kluka bluffing with a lot of draws, and there being so many draws here. And this is a range that I call an own the draws range. So imagine that you are Lucky CPS, you're sitting here with something like Ace-4 of diamonds. If you raise and Poker Kluka calls with a flush draw or a straight draw, you've really owned him, because you are ahead of his hand, but even if he hits his draw, you're never putting any more money in. So by raising with these hands that have kind of weak showdown value but do beat the draws, you really crush the equity of the draws in a betting range, and these kind of raises are supposed to be part of the range for Lucky CPS in this situation. So it could be ace king high, pair of 4s, maybe even pair of 5s, like whichever hand you choose. You can't have these at too high of a frequency, because then your range just becomes a bunch of trash, and we don't want to be raising with a bunch of trash into a bunch of top pairs and draws, but certainly want to have these in the range some of the time. So Lucky CPS raises, Poker Kluka clicks it back, signaling that he's ready to go all in with either a strong draw or a good value hand. Lucky CPS obliges, goes all in, Poker Kluka calls, and cards are face up. And Lucky CPS actually has 0% to win in this situation with Ace-8 offsuit. And looking at this again, I think the natural response to think is, what the hell is this guy doing? What's this crazy play and what's going on at this 25-50 table? I'll start out saying I do agree with that. This play is way out there. It's very far from a GTO play, and I wouldn't consider it a good play in a vacuum. You need very, very good reasons, and you shouldn't be making these plays very often. That being said, I can certainly see what Lucky CPS was thinking. He was seeing all the millions of draws on this board, and there are quite a lot of draws, raising his ace-8 to own them and check back the river. And then when Kluka clicks it back, he's thinking, well, there are still a million draws, let's just shove. I still beat the draws, I think he's still gonna have too many of them. I'm gonna shove, he'll call me with 10-8 of clubs, and I'll feel like a genius. So this play is very unbalanced. It's not solver approved or solver recommended. This is really more of a feel player, red line warrior type of play that Lucky CPS made. I think that kind of explains the reasoning, shows you the type of players that you have here, where Muna's star is using the random number generator to make the crazy check raise with King Jack, but Lucky CPS guys was not using a random number generator to do this with Ace-8. Nobody in their right mind would do that. He's just a very exploitative player, thinking of the other guy's range very, very accurately, and trying to make the best play and exploit his opponent's mistakes. But certainly did not work out for him this time. Next hand is going to be a hand between Ross 654 and Oshpiel 888. Both high stakes regulars. Oshpiel specifically is kind of a legend to me. He's been around for a very long time, very, very consistent, very good player. They're playing a BVB hand where Ross raises to 150 and Oshpiel raises to 275. And Ross calls. And before we start going through the hand, I just want to put it out there that we're seeing all sorts of crazy plays in this video. The King Jack raise, the Ace-8 all in, and now we see this. And like I said, I picked the hands because I found them interesting. I thought they were worth talking about. And here, all I have to say is there is no strategy behind the small 3-bet. It's almost certainly just a misclick. So don't think too much about it. Oshpiel probably wanted to click 450, but his beard just dropped out of his hand and he fumbled around and hit something and, went out 275. Shit happens, we all misclick, doesn't matter how much money you play, it certainly happens to everyone. So Ross calls, and we have a misclick pot, and misclick pots have interesting dynamics because nobody is really prepared for them. What's the misclick range, what's the calling range, what's the strategy like, so it's a lot more room for improvisation and feel in terms of what's going on. But for the sake of this analysis, I'm going to treat this as a normal 3-bet pot and talk about more normal 3-bet pot reactions, even though the range, at least for Ross, is certainly wider than it would usually be. So yeah, here Ross checks, Oshpiel bets half pot, which again, if we're focusing on the misclick, he certainly has a huge range advantage now and can get to bet very aggressively. And Ross goes for a check raise, about 2.5x, I think. Now this 9-6 deuce two-tone board is one where Ross should be very aggressively check raising. Because Oshpiel's 3-bet range is very high card heavy with hands like Ace-King and Ace-Queen and King-Queen, and all of those miss, you can't let him just bet and see a free turn and river whenever he wants. You have to deny equity from those high card hands with aggressive check raises, and these check raises should be done with a variety of hands. So obviously some draws and some sets, but the range is also a bit merged, where you can have something like 6-7 suited, 10-9 suited. Those hands can certainly check raise as well. Even something as weak as pocket 3s potentially. So Ross raises, Oshpiel calls. At this point, you'd expect his range to be, all pairs and draws and stuff like that, but also stuff like King Queen of Diamonds or Ace Queen with a spade, or even something like Jack 10 of Hearts. So 2 overcards with some kind of backdoor potential, where you can hit your overcard to make top pair or hit your backdoor to make a nice draw. Those hands are certainly incentivized to call because the raise is so small. So we get 7 of clubs turn. If we're thinking about ranges, this card heavily favors Ross's range. Lots of his check raise bluffs or merged range improve, whether it's pocket 7s, pocket 8s, 6-7 suited, 10-9 suited, like all the hands improved, a lot of hands improved a bit on the 7. While for Oshpiel, all of his floats actually didn't improve. So this is a good card for Ross to bet at a very high frequency. He goes for a 3rd pot bet, and this bet, in my eyes, is indicating that he still wants to be betting very merged, and he's like eyeing Oshpiel's ace-king offsuit with a spade and just wants to put it in a really tough spot. Like all the offsuit hands that floated and didn't improve are now facing just about the bet where their EV drops to 0, which is really painful. Oshpiel calls. Still supposedly some of those hands, though certainly not all of them, as well as pairs and draws and all the usual suspects. River 8 of spades, another very good card for Ross. All of his flushes get there, some of his straights get there, some of his pairs become 2 pairs or sets. So a lot of his range improves. He decides to check. Now here, so much of his range improved, I'd expect him to always have some sort of pair when checking. Maybe something like ace-9 or ace-8 that has a pair and feels like it's too strong to bluff and wants to check. We're supposed to have a few traps here, but not too many. But yeah, very often 1 pair hands, maybe some 2 pair hands. That's kind of the range I'd expect to see from Ross. Oshpiel goes all in, which is, I guess, straights are better plus bluffs. And bluffs are going to be a bit hard to come up with here, unless you realize Ross always has a nice pair. So first of all, for bluffs we could have something like ace-king with a spade, if that's still in our range after the turn. But other than that, imagine you have something like ace-6 for Oshpiel, or ace-deuce that go to the river. I think this would be a reasonable spot to bluff those, because they don't actually have very much showdown value, effectively speaking. So Oshpiel goes all in, Ross makes the call, and they turn up 10-3 of spades for Oshpiel, which makes a ton of sense, very standardly played. Ross ended up slow playing kings against the misclick, check raising flop, betting turn, very logical, definitely checking river, and with the king of spades decided to make the hero call, thinking that this is a very strong removal effect against flushes, which is very true, and giving Oshpiel credit for turning enough stuff into bluffs. Where this kind of bluff catch would work okay. I will say personally, to me this is a bit of an iffy bluff catch. Best case it's okay, but against some players this ends up really bad if they, you know, fold the ace-kings on the turn or check back the ace-6 on the river. Like, you have to have your assumptions kind of line up to make this call work, and similar to Barry Sweet's king-high call where he lost to a stronger hand that was bluffing, this is a spot where against some players this call is going to be very bad, and it's tough for it to be very good, so you need to be careful making these kind of calls. Okay, last hand of the video is going to be another hand between Muniz Star and Limitless. A single raise pot, we get a queen 4-5 two-tone board. Limitless will check raise flop, Muniz calls. Muniz could have any pair, any draw, any backdoor. Limitless, you know, a bit similar, but more polarized. Lots of backdoor draws and draws. 2 pair plus, maybe some 1 pair hands. 3 of clubs, Limitless overbets. So at this point he's becoming very polarized. 3 of clubs, certainly a good card for him, improving some of his straight draws to straights. But Muniz has all those straights himself. And here we'd expect Limitless to have his stronger semi-bluffs plus value, and I'm not sure where to draw the line on value bets. Like, is something like 4-5 still good enough? Is queen 5 still good enough given all the straights that came in? Or do you actually need a set or a straight to keep betting? But yeah, he does keep betting. Muniz calls, 6 of spades on the river, so 4 to a straight. Now it's all about straights for both players, and Limitless slows down and checks, which you'd imagine he would do with quite a few hands, sets, 2 pairs, stuff like that. Muniz goes all in, Limitless makes the call, and they turn up Jack 10 of clubs for Muniz for the float turned flush draw turned bluff. Limitless has king 6, 1 pair, which is pretty crazy. So I want to go through this hand and show you guys how actually in this hand both players played very well. Muniz bet call flop with a 3 to a straight flush, a very reasonable call. Turns the flush draw, calls again, gets the river 6, check to him, bottom of his range. Certainly makes sense to bluff this hand, so I don't see any other way to play it really, unless maybe turn is a bit close, but I think it's probably a good turn call and a good river bluff, and really nothing else to do here. Limitless on the flop, really nice hand to check raise. Again, you see this, the 3 to a straight flush for a nice backdoor. King is an overcard to the queen, which is also nice. If you turn a king, you can keep value betting. So really nice kind of drawing hand to check raise. Turns the open-ender and makes a big barrel. This is a little bit loose in my eyes. I don't know that you can do this every single time, but certainly fine. And then he rivers a 6, has a decent amount of showdown value. He's now beating hands such as ace 4 of clubs, ace 3 of diamonds, you know, ace king of clubs, ace 5 of clubs. So just has, you know, decent amount of showdown value. Certainly makes sense to check. Sometimes goes check check and you win. And then when Muniz makes his all-in river shove and Limitless is thinking, what happens on a 4 to a straight is that Muniz becomes very polarized for value. And we'd expect him to bet, say, only a straight or better. Maybe a set, but certainly not something like top pair. This situation really changes the removal effects that Limitless needs to have for calling. Now, 6 is actually good enough in the sense to beat bluffs, unlike Barry Sweet's king high call. 6 should certainly be good enough to beat all of Muniz's bluffs. And it also has the effect of blocking 6-7. 6-7, one of the main ways Muniz gets here with a 7 is a hand like 6-7, so having a 6 is really nice in that regard. King of Hearts also nice that it's not a club and not a diamond, so not really interacting with hands that Muniz would be bluffing with. And overall, I think a very solid call, makes a lot of sense. Crazy as it looks, this is actually very well played by both players. So, that's it for the hand analysis of this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts about the crazy hands that are going on. Specifically these hands were all played on PokerStars in November 2020. If you guys enjoyed this and want to see more hands, feel free to go over the thread yourself, send me any specific hands you'd like to hear talked about. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.